Hello everyone. This video we will learn how you can have different background images in your application based on the seasons that we are in. While trying to achieve this, we will also learn how you can connect to a SharePoint list from PowerApps. Also, we will be learning about all these controls and all these functions in PowerApps. Just to get an idea of what we are trying to accomplish, once we are done with our application, every time a user goes into our application, user will get a random picture that you have stored in SharePoint based on the season. So let's get started. First, we are going to go to office.com and select SharePoint from the application list. From here, you select your site, then click on New, then Blank List. Once you have typed in the name, you can click on Create to create a list. Here, we are going to create an image column. To do that, click on Add Column, then select Image Type from the drop-down. Once you have given a name, you can click on Save. Now, we can start adding images to our list. To do this, you can just click on New, then type in the title, then select an image for your image file, then click on Save. I will continue adding a few more pictures here by doing the exact same steps. If you like to learn how you can add pictures or data to SharePoint list using PowerApps, so you can add multiple images at the same time, please let me know in the comments. I can create a separate video for this. We also want to display our ID columns in the list. To do this, you can click on Add Columns, then click on Show Hide Columns option, then check mark ID from the list, then click Apply. We can also rearrange positions of columns by selecting and dragging them. Once you have added all the images, we can go to make.powerapps.com and create a blank application to start working on our solution. Once the application is created, we need to connect to our SharePoint list to this application. To do this, click on Data from the left side ribbon, then click on Add. From here, search for SharePoint. Once you select SharePoint, you can select your site from the recent sites or copy URL of your SharePoint list and paste it in the text box. This is going to show us the content of our SharePoint site. From here, select the SharePoint list that you have just created. Now, we will be able to reference to this list and use it in our application. To use an image from our SharePoint list as the background, just select the background property of the screen and reference our SharePoint list in the function plane. You can see here it's giving me an error because our list name has returned a table. And here property is looking for an image file. To just get one file, we will be using one function called first. The first function returns the first record of a table. To reference a column from a record, you can enter dot, then enter the column name. You can adjust the image position in the image position properties. So here we have successfully referenced an image stored in a SharePoint list. Even if this is what you are looking for, since we are referencing our data source directly from our function, if you are using this with multiple screens, it could cause delays in loading. So to create a cache memory of our SharePoint list when our application is loaded, we can go to the Onstart action in the app and add the function for this. Onstart runs every time someone opens the application. The function that we are going to add here is collect. Collect function adds records to a data source. We can also use this to create a table in our application for the section, since collection creates a new collection if the data source doesn't exist. To create a new collection, type in the function collect, then enter the name for your new collection. Then enter the item or source of table that you want to be collected to the new collection. Now, if we run our application on start, we will be able to reference our new collection instead of the data source in our background function plane. If you would like to see all the records from the collection, you can add a display form control, data table control, or use a gallery. We will use vertical gallery for our purpose. We will make data source of this gallery the collection we just created. Now we can see all the records in our collection in the gallery. Now we will need to figure out a way to just filter the records from the current seasons that we are in. Even though we will be running this formula on Onstart property of the app, just for the ease of use, I will just add a button. I will copy the formula from the Onstart property of the app to onSelect property of the button. One of the issues that we could see here with the collection function is every time someone triggers this function, collection is taking all the records from the season images SharePoint list and adding it in our collection seasons. So we need to find a function to remove all the files existing in the collection before collecting new items. For this, we could use clear function. The clear function deletes all the records of the collection. So now if you try this, we can see our collection is behaving how we want it. We also have a function called ClearCollect, which is going to clear everything inside the collection that we are collecting before collecting the records. Let's replace clear and collect with ClearCollect here. So here in the application background, we are displaying the first image from the collection, but what we want to do is to pick an image for the season that we are in. To do this, we are going to go to our SharePoint list and add a new number column, and we are going to call it season number. Once we have done that, we can add a season number by selecting the record and editing them. Once we have completed this, we can navigate back to our application. Now we have a season number on our list. We need to find a way to identify the current month from the application and associate it with the season number. We have a function month, which is going to retain the month value from a date. We also have a function today, which is going to retain the current date. So if we add a today function inside the month function, this is going to retain 10 as the current month that we are in. We will create a variable and assign this value to that variable to be used in our application. To create global variable, we have a function called set. Set is going to assign a value to a global variable or create a new variable if that variable doesn't exist. To create a new global variable, you can type in the function set, then enter a name for the variable. After comma, you can pass the value that you want to store in that variable. Once you have triggered the function, you can add a label to see the number value that we just passed onto this variable. Now, we need to create a table with the month number and seasons in it so we can use it to reference to our SharePoint list. For this, we can use our ClearCollect function. Once you type in the ClearCollect, you can type in the name of the new collection that we are creating. After, you can start a curly bracket where we will be entering our item. You can type in the name of the column, and after you can pass the value for that column that you are creating for this item. So we are going to create columns: month name, month number, seasons, and season number, and pass values for these. Please note, for character value, you need to put double quotes around them. And for number values, you can just type in the number. So I will continue and add items for this collection. So after completing this, I'm just going to run this by clicking on the button. And to see the data in a table, I'm going to add a new data table and make the data source as the collection we just created. And for the fields, I will just add all the fields that we have available. So if we change our field to white, we will be able to see all the items that we just added. Now we are going to look for the records from this table that we have created where it matches with the current month. To do this, we have a function called LookUp. LookUp function returns a table from a table which satisfies the formula. For the formula, we are going to type in lookup, then the source table that we are looking at. Then after comma, the condition. Here, we will return the record with month number matching our this month variable that we have created. This will return a record. We can create a variable and store value from this record in that variable. So on Onstart, we were pulling all the records from our SharePoint list. Now we will just pull records for the current season that we are in. For this, we can use filter function. Filter function is going to retain all the records from a data source which satisfies the formula that we pass. We will add this function inside our ClearCollect, where we reference our data source. For the formula, we will enter filter, then the source. Then after comma, we type in the condition, which is season number equal to the season number in the variable that we just created. This is going to retain just the records for the season that we are in. So if you look in the formula for background, now we are retaining the image value of the first record in our collection. If you want to randomly select an image when you have more than one images for the season, we will need to use RandBetween function. RandBetween returns a random number between two values that we pass to this function. So if you pass the minimum value of ID and maximum value of ID, it would return a valid ID or record that we have in our collection. For finding minimum value of ID, we are going to use min function. And for finding the maximum number of ID, we are going to use max function. This is going to return a random ID between minimum and maximum IDs that we have in the collection. We will create a variable to store this value. Now, after selecting the button, we can use this variable to filter the image file within the background function plane. For the formula, we can filter the collection where ID is equal to the random value variable that we created. Now, if you try to run this by selecting the button, you can see it's coming up with a different picture for the season. This is great. But this formula would break if IDs passed to a season is not in sequence. In this case, if we were in winter season, this formula wouldn't work since the IDs are not in sequence. For example, if we add a new image file for the spring season and navigates back to the app and run the formula, we can see the file we just added. And if we update the title label to ID, we can see the IDs of these files are no longer in sequence. We will just add a label to display the random value that the application comes up with. Now, if you try to run the formula, you can see the background property breaks. So a solution of this could be adding an extra column in the collection with sequence numbers. Now, we will learn how we can do this. To add a new column to our collection, you can modify your formula and add column function before the source. You can enter the new column name after the source inside double quotes, then enter the value for the column after comma. We are just going to enter 1 to see how this is going to work. Once you select the button, if you go to the fields of the data table and add the column we just created, we can see how the add column function works. Now we will try to make this number in sequence. To do that, PowerApps doesn't have a for or while loop function like in other programming languages. What we have in PowerApps is ForAll function. ForAll will evaluate a formula for all the records in a table. For example, if you run ForAll with the current collection that we have, it will run the formula 4 times since we have 4 records in it. We could also use the values from this collection inside the ForAll function. So to add the sequence number, we will add a ForAll function for the collection seasons. In the formula section, we will create a new collection. One thing to note here is you cannot create a new variable or use ClearCollect inside a ForAll function. So we will use collect here to create a new collection and pass value from the collection seasons with a new column sequence number added in it. To see this, we will copy the data table that we have in the screen and make the new collection as the data source of this table. Once we have added the sequence number and selected the button to run the formula, you can see ForAll has added 16 records in here because we were running ForAll based on collection seasons, and it has 4 records. And we were collecting records from collection seasons to our new collection seasons 2, every time we run the formula. So it ran 4 times and added 16 rows of data in the collection. For the sequence number column, we want to pass a sequence number, not just one. To do this, we could use a function countRows. CountRows will count the number of rows in a table or collection. So if you replace 1 with countRows and add our new collection here, and we will add 1 with it. So our sequence will start with 1. So now, if you try to run this, you can see sequence number does work, but we should only run 1 record in the ForAll at a time, not all of them. And you can see here, since we forgot to add clear before our ForAll formula, the collection is adding the new records to the end. So we will just add clear function before the formula to make sure our collection is clear before running the formulas. Just to collect single records while collecting, we can try using first function like we have used in our background image property. So let's add first before add column function and select the button to see how this is going to work. Here you can see the sequence number part has worked. We just need to find a way to pass 1 item at a time. PowerApps also has a last function. When first has retaining the first record of a collection, last would retain the last record of the collection. So there's another function called FirstN, which we could use here. FirstN retains the first number of record as we define. We can test this by just entering 1 as the count for the FirstN. And you could see the ForAll function just retain the first record. And if we update the count to 2, we can see the second record has been retained. So we could update the count number while we are doing the ForAll function. We must have a solution for our problem. And when we look at the sequence number, it's already doing that. So if we copy the formula for the sequence number and use it as the count, we will have records of the current seasons with the sequence number column. We will just copy this formula and add this in the button we were working with before. Now, we need to update the formula so it would show the random number between the minimum and maximum sequence number, not ID. Once we have done that, we can go to the background image property of the screen and update the collection to collection season 2 and update the column name to sequence number. Now, if you run the formula by selecting the button, you can see the app is showing us the different pictures from the current season. Now, if we copy the formula and paste it in the Onstart property of the app, user will be getting a random image for the season that we are in from the SharePoint list that we have created. To test this, you can save and publish this version of the application, then go to make.powerapps.com, then select the application we just created. You can see here, application is picking a random picture from the current season every time we log into this application. You can add more images to the season by going into the SharePoint list. In this video, we learned how we can add background images to a PowerApps Canvas application from an image stored in SharePoint. Thank you.